On today's Patriot Nation podcast, we are joined by the managing editor of Acme Packing Company. Listen, we are excited about this because Matt's out today. He's feeling a little bit under the weather. And so we're like, you know what? Let's bring in a Packers guy. We're awfully excited to talk Packers with him. It's Tex Western from Acme Packing Company. Thanks for coming on, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Always happy to be on. Always happy to talk about the Packers, and excited to kind of hear what you have to say about the Patriots as well.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting week because I was excited about the Mac Jones versus Aaron Rodgers, showdown, if you will, to use a little Western verbiage there. But I just Mac Jones ain't playing. Like there was some talk today about he's in the facility and he's not playing. And even if he wanted to play, I would hope that the Patriots aren't dumb enough to let him play, even if he wants to. You're just asking for him to hurt his ankle again. It's stupid.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't believe that there was even any talk about it earlier today. When you've got a young guy like that, you can't put his long-term future on the line for a game at this stage of the season, let alone at this point in his career. So
right.
You can't sacrifice that.
Yeah,
or potentially sacrifice it.
Yeah, 100%. And the Chargers did it with Justin Herbert last week, and supposedly he's feeling better, and he got an injection. I just don't get it. And even at some point, as the team, you have to protect the guy from himself.
Yep.
He is your guy. He is the guy that's going to be your quarterback for the next 10 to 15 years. He can't break a rib and puncture his lung. Like you just can't have that happen.
Right.
So. It just, you never know what type of damage can be done. And I know it's not his shoulder. So okay, it's not a degenerative thing that's going to happen in his shoulder, but still, I just feel like sometimes you got to protect the guys from themselves because they would be out there if they could. They'd be out there if they can. If there's any way that they could possibly play, they want to get out there. And you love that about those guys. Yep. But then it's your job as an organization to say I don't care if you want to play. We appreciate it. We love you, but you're not playing. You're going to get hurt.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean the Tua thing, right? Like he just as we record this, he just hit his head again and looks like he's gonna be out for the rest of this game on Thursday night. So at some point, exactly, you have to take the decision out of the players' hands and look out for their long-term well-being.
Exactly. So speaking of long-term well-being, the long-term quarterback in Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers. Of course, there was lots of talk last year, and more so last year than this year, but there's been lots of talk about him retiring and him doing ayahuasca and him just, being immunized and just like an absolute. There is, I tell you what, the one thing about there is no shortage of headlines out in Green Bay when it comes to Aaron Rodgers, but he's still won MVP last year. I still think it should have gone to Brady, but won MVP last year. Still was playing at the top of his game, even though they refused to draft wide receivers. Of course, they drafted one finally in the second round this year. But I don't know. He just keeps doing it. He just keeps doing it with lackluster guys. And, have you seen decline from him at all? Or is he just the same old Aaron Rodgers out there every week?
Yeah, it is interesting to start this season because obviously Devontae Adams leaving is the big story for receiving core this year. Guy was 150, 160 target plus guy, each of the last 4 or 5 years. And those targets are getting spread around, obviously a lot more this season. The Christian Watson draft pick in the second round, I mean, basically that was effectively a first round pick, just not in number because it was at 34. The guy who's actually been really impressing, the rookie, is Romeo Doubs, the 4th round pick. He won Rookie of the Week for Week 3, had 8 catches, 70 yards, and a touchdown against Tampa last Sunday. So he's actually the one who's been getting more playing time because Watson missed some time in training camp and actually missed the game last week. But that said, I think there is a little bit of concern around Rodgers right now, if only because he's not taken the same type of deep shots that he has, and some of that is he's taken what the defenses are giving him, right? So teams are not dropping a safety into the box to defend the run. They're sticking in a too high safety look basically on every snap against the Packers this year. And so, Rodgers wisely is gonna stick to underneath stuff, stick to the easy chunk yards. The one thing that we've kind of noticed is the last couple of weeks he just hasn't seemed to be throwing in rhythm and making his progressions the same way he used to. There have been too many open receivers that he hasn't pulled the trigger on throwing the ball to, and it's things like that are just a little uncharacteristic of him. He's still putting up some decent numbers, and certainly he's good at navigating the pocket. And when he's dialed in, the accuracy is still incredible. Right? That's not there. It's the one thing that's starting to creep in our minds a little bit is just some of the decision making and just not making some of the reads that we have been so accustomed to him making over his entire career.
Yeah, no, it's tough, and that's the hard thing is that you get to the age that he is at this point, right? And it's like, it's not as easy as it was, right?
Yeah.
Like he always made it look so easy and effortless. I mean, he just flicked the ball and it'd go 60 yards, and he'd be running one way and throwing across his body and doing all sorts of crazy things. And he can probably do that at times, right? But he just can't do it as much as he could. I mean, you mentioned Watson. It's like his second career play runs a streak and he hits him in the hands and he just dropped it. You know what I mean? And so I do wonder too, and you have some of those concerns with Brady where like Brady didn't look as good in 2019. I think he was kind of checked out mentally a little bit in New England, but like he also didn't trust the guys around him. And you wonder if that has something to do with how Rodgers looks like now. And maybe by the end of the year that'll get fixed, right? But like, maybe he doesn't trust the guys that are around other than, 97-year-old Randall Cobb who's running around in the slot still, right? Like, so that's difficult,
Definitely, and that's always been something that Rodgers has talked about in the past is breaking in his receivers. He does so many little nonverbal communication things, his different checks, his different signals, and he expects all of his receivers to know every one of those signals and remember them the same way that he remembers them, right? Like he's got a photographic memory, and it seems like he almost expects his receivers to have the same type of memory to think back to. There was a comment he made a couple years ago about, I can't remember who it was, but he said, well, I made this signal to him in training camp and I made it again in week 10 and I expected him to like pick up on that same signal.
Right.
And like that's a really high bar, right, to have that expectation, especially of young receivers. He certainly has it, and that's how you get playing time and how you get the ball thrown to him when you're playing with Rodgers. But yeah, that definitely is part of it, the making sure that you're in sync with these receivers. And he's even kind of talked too about how, the young guys coming into the league now, he feels like he's got more in common with the Packers coaching staff just based on age and, life experience and stuff than some of these young receivers coming in, guys that are coming in at 22 years old. Whereas his coaches are a lot closer in age to he is. So I think all those things probably play into it a little bit. I do wonder if the progression thing I mentioned, I mean, some of that could definitely be just him, not quite trusting some of these young guys to maybe run the route exactly right or at the right depth or bend it off the way he wants it. And, in the past, he's not been shy about letting receivers know when they did it wrong. So yeah, I think all those things play into it. I do think that as the season goes along, things will get straightened out a little bit more. He'll get a little more comfortable, and hopefully the run game will pick up enough to force defenses to account for that just a little bit more, and just not be able to sit back in too high shells all game long every week, and maybe open it up for the occasional big play action bomb or something like that.
Yeah, no, and that's a great point, and it kind of takes me to my next point, because as good as Rodgers is, and everyone knows he's good, again, reigning MVP, like, one of the best quarterbacks of the generation for sure, I really think the offense runs with the running backs, because you have two really good, I mean, listen, they drafted A.J. Dillon in the second round, right, a few years back, and it was everyone was like, what the hell are they doing? Rodgers needs receivers. Like, what's wrong with them? They already have Aaron Jones. And you can see, and listen, we're from up here. No one up here really watches BC because we don't really watch college football, but like,
sure.
People that watch college football could tell you that A.J. Dillon was an absolute monster, right? Quadzilla is real. He's a beast, right? but he also brings some speed as well. And Aaron Jones is like another receiver coming out of the backfield. So I think that 1-2 punch you have over there is huge. And that, I think, is where if you start to wear teams down, and this is where it's going to be difficult for the Patriots because they have now brought in smaller. I mean, Mack Wilson's the perfect example. Mack Wilson is a guy who's a smaller linebacker, who's fast and runs around. That's great. But against A.J. Dillon, that's not going to work, right? So, like, if they just line up and try to play bully ball, they might be able to do that against some of that front seven with the Patriots because they're really necessarily designed for that anymore because they're trying to keep pace with, the Miamis and the Buffaloes and the Kansas Cities of the world that are running by everyone. And by the way, Green Bay can still do that a little bit with their receivers, but with the ability to run people over in the running game, I think is so huge. And that to me is going to be the biggest matchup of the week, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's interesting to see because the Packers under LaFleur had been very much a zone running team. That had been really their identity these last 3 years. And, that's such a huge component of the Shanahan, LaFleur,
Right.
McVay offensive tree.
As we're learning, yep.
Yeah. But this season, we've seen a lot more pin and pull power stuff, pulling guards, pulling center Josh Myers a lot in the run game, which is something that we really never saw out of LaFleur offenses in the past. And that's really where they've had the biggest successes on the ground. So when they're getting these, and they've got some really athletic linemen. I think that's a big key to this is they've got guys who can really get out and move in space and clear some space out, pulling around. So that's a big piece of it, especially with Jones. I think that for being as small a guy as he is, he runs power really well. And then you've got Dillon to kind of be the hammer to run maybe a little bit of that inside zone where he's called upon to maybe break more tackles with physicality rather than kind of pulling guards and having guys clear the way for him. So it is a really interesting 1-2 punch. They do very much have different running styles. But they're also starting to use them a lot together in the pony packages and in two running back sets. The big thing that has been happening with that so far this season is it's been very predictable. They only run like 2 or 3 plays, it seems like, out of that, even though they run it about 7 or 8 snaps a game. So I think what we're going to start seeing in the next couple of weeks is the Packers start to add some wrinkles in when they do put both of those guys on the field together, because it's just getting a little too predictable with, they're going to line up with both of them, on either side of Rodgers in the shotgun. One of them motions out, and then it's either an inside zone handoff or it's a swing pass to the guy who's in motion. And they do that 3 or 4 times a game, and they haven't really come up with any good wrinkles off of it, or at least if they've come up with them, they haven't unveiled them yet. Yeah. So I think how they do that over the course of the season is going to be really interesting to track. But they've talked about it in the offseason, and they've been doing it and getting both of those guys on the field together. Now it's time to see the creativity come out that we know is capable for this offensive coaching staff to have.
Yeah, it's funny because the Patriots have kind of run a few of the similar things, right? Where they've run kind of a guy into the flat, almost on like a on a swing pass, almost like a screen, right? Yep. Not actually a screen, but almost like a quick screen pass. With guys blocking in front of them, right? And people are jumping it. They're jumping that route, and Mac it was almost a pick 6 last week because it's just catch it and throw. Right? He's not even looking, right? Because that should be blocked, and it wasn't. But I do think that at some point they keep jumping it and jumping it and jumping it, and then at some point, okay, that guy's going to pretend to block for a second. You're going to look like you're throwing it in the flat, and bam, that guy's going to be wide open for a 40-yard gain, right? So there are things that will come off of it. I do think that eventually, you run that play. And it's funny because there's a play. So this is going way back to 2014 with the Patriots, but they had the famous Edelman pass, against the Ravens. That play was called in the Kansas City game, and Amendola called the play off because of the defense that was out there. If they run that play, now it's on tape and the Ravens have seen it. Maybe they don't stop it still, but at least they've seen it. That's a play they never ran all year long, right? So it's like, okay, maybe they don't throw in the wrinkles now, or maybe the wrinkles aren't there for them later. But then in the playoffs, when it matters, all of a sudden it looks like, hey, something's going to happen, and then bam, something else happens, right? So I guess you never really know how it's gonna work out. But
yep,
I do think I am excited to see to see how the Patriots defense holds up against them because, they really haven't played a great running team yet. You know what I mean? Like the teams they've played against are okay running teams, but nothing like the Packers, where they can really get after it and run the ball. And of course, the Steelers are a good running team, but they're not like a great running. I mean, Najee Harris is fine; he's a good player, but they're not like a really good running team. I think the Packers do a really nice job of running, and those powers. We're very used to those powers around here with with Damian Harris, especially, and Ramondre Stevenson as well. And they can be really effective and just wear defenses down. And so I'm excited to see how the defense holds up against that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And again, the big thing that the Packers with that haven't really gotten going a whole lot is the play action passing game yet too. It's been again a lot of dink and dunks, a lot of underneath stuff, few receiver screens here and there, but they've really only dialed up one or two big play action passes. And hit on one, a big 50-yarder to Sammy Watkins in the second game against Chicago. But that's really the only big explosive play that they've had. That and I think one slot fade to Lazard. And actually, no, that one wasn't play action at all. Now that I'm thinking about it, that was just a quick, two-step drop fade over the top last week in Tampa. So yeah, the play action game is such a huge part too of again the LaFleur Shanahan style of offense, and it just hasn't been. I think it hasn't been working in part again because defenses are keying so much on taking away the big play and keeping those safeties back.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, listen, if you're playing the Packers, your thought is Aaron Rodgers is the guy, and so let's play too deep. And it seems to be this is what they're doing against everyone now, right? They're doing it against Josh Allen and they're doing it against Patrick Mahomes, and it's smart because you're not going to beat us with the deep ball, right? And what's funny is that Belichick's been doing this for years because he knows, like, okay, go down the field in 12 plays and score a touchdown. It's a lot harder than, throwing 175-yard bomb, right? So it definitely makes a lot of sense, right? But as I say that Rodgers is the main guy, and he is, but to shift away from the offense, the defense in Green Bay is significantly better than, and I shouldn't say what it normally is, but it normally feels like Green Bay is not typically this defensive juggernaut, right?
Yeah.
And I know, I realize that Brady didn't have all of his receivers on Sunday. I get that. But to hold Tampa to 12 points at home, that's an impressive performance, right? I don't care who's out there for receiver with Brady. That's impressive, right? And so I think the Green Bay's defense is significantly better. Of course, not having Mac Jones sucks for the Patriots. And I'll talk about the decision at quarterback that they have. Someone already commented about that, so we'll talk about that. But I do think that's one thing that people that haven't watched the Packers, like Patriots fans that haven't watched the Packers, I think you're going to be really surprised at how good the Packers defense is compared to the last time we saw them.
Yeah, I think especially the pass D. The pass rush is very solid. You've got a great outside duo with Rashawn Gary and Preston Smith. Preston's having another good year. He's one of those guys. He kind of fluctuates up and down year to year, but it seems like he's back in a good year again this year. And Rashawn Gary is really coming into his own, I think, as one of the premier pass rushers in the NFL. And you pair those two guys up with a great interior pass rushing nose tackle in Kenny Clark. That's a really great recipe for collapsing the pocket and getting to the quarterback. And the secondary is really solid, especially the cornerback unit. Jair Alexander being back after missing most of last season is huge. Eric Stokes looks really solid on the other side. As long as he's not covering Justin Jefferson, Eric Stokes looks really solid. And then Rasul Douglas was just a diamond in the rough off the scrap heap in the middle of last season and has really been a tremendous find for Green Bay too. So, and a couple of solid safeties. So the area where I think that you can exploit this team a little bit is still in the run game. We were hoping that a couple of the reinforcements that Green Bay was getting on the defensive line was going to help in that area. Jaron Reed came over from Kansas City as a free agent, hasn't really lived up to a little bit of the billing as a run stuffer. And the Packers do tend to play a lot of nickel. And we'll probably see a lot of like your typical kind of 2-4-5 nickel that you'd see from from 3-4 base teams where you pull a D lineman off and put a fifth DB on. But you'll also see a little bit, I think, when they want to stop the run of this 3-3-5 nickel, this penny front that they're calling it in Green Bay, where instead of pulling a lineman, they'll pull one of the two inside linebackers, and that helps out with the gap integrity a little bit up front. It helped a lot against Tampa. They basically shut down Leonard Fournette and the run game almost entirely, and that was really encouraging to see after they really got shredded against the Bears in the run in the second half. Some of that might have been that they were sitting back and, not really keying on the run when they were up big against Chicago. But even so, it was a little disconcerting to see David Montgomery kind of cutting through the defense pretty well. But again, the pass defense is the strength of that unit for sure. But you're right. It is a much improved unit overall, I think, than it's been the last several years. Because, you really think back, you look in the last decade, and the defense has been what's let down this team, especially in the playoffs over the years. Last year's loss to San Francisco was really the first time that you can put the loss on the offense and then the special teams, which is a whole nother argument. But yeah, it looks like a much improved unit over last year, and certainly over the last handful of years when they struggled to kind of break out of like that maybe middle to bottom third of the league, just an overall performance on D.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. There is one I got to go off track just for a second. Dark Blue Gold's asking, is that Chris Farley on that T-shirt?
Yes, absolutely.
Where in the world did you get that shirt?
I honestly, a friend of mine got it for me. I couldn't tell you where it came from, but yeah, Chris Farley, proud Wisconsin native, proud cheesehead.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
What a shirt.
That's
what a flipping shirt. Oh my goodness. No, and listen, you're right about the defense. What's funny about the Patriots situation this week is that their passing game stinks now, especially with Mac Jones hurt. And so they're going to run the ball a lot more, you would think. Now, what the benefit that the Packers have is that they're just going to throw 9 guys in the box on every single play. Because why wouldn't you, right? Yeah. Like, it's Brian Hoyer, right? And it is Brian Hoyer that's starting. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But, like, it's Brian Hoyer. He's not going to beat you. Like, if Brian Hoyer beats you, okay. Like, it is what it is, right? Yeah. So, but I do think, like, Eric Stokes was a guy that got drafted in the first round last year. People were like, what the hell are they doing drafting this guy? And, like, he's looked good. He has looked good, right? And so I do think I've been impressed. Rasul Douglas, man, that guy was in the scrap heap. I mean, that guy was done. He was out of football.
Yep.
He was like, this guy stinks. And then he came in and had just an insane year last year, and he's still playing well. It's crazy.
He was incredible because they signed him off the Cardinals practice squad in, like, week 5, right after Alexander gets hurt. His first game is against Arizona, and he gets that game-sealing pick on Thursday Night Football to seal that game. Like, you can't script that. It's just ridiculous. And then he goes out, gets a couple of pick sixes, and ends up, I think he was a Pro Bowl alternate at the end of last year when he played like 10 games or something like that. So yeah, he's incredible. I'm so happy for him just as a person that he was he turned it around and got a nice little payday this offseason. He's so much fun to listen to in like press conferences and interviews and stuff because he doesn't hold back. He will tell you anything you want to know, and he's a fun guy to listen to because he'll tell it like it is. So yeah, he's been a joy to have around and to cover as part of this team.
That's great. That's great. And you love to hear those stories, of guys that, the one I always come back to for the Patriots is Malcolm Butler, right? Malcolm Butler wasn't a UDFA. Malcolm Butler was a training camp invite.
Yeah.
After all the UDFAs in the entire league had been signed, you just need extra bodies for rookie minicamp. He was an extra body for rookie minicamp. And then he comes in and in his rookie season ends up playing in the Super Bowl and making the play. And then, gets a big contract and so on and so forth. I mean, it's just like, it's unbelievable. Like the guy, he wasn't a nobody. He was like a nobody. He was like a nobody's nobody.
Yeah.
Right. It's like crazy. So, you just see that stuff like that happen. And it wasn't like it took 5 years to happen. It happened instantaneously. Right. And so Rasul Douglas, same thing. It's like he couldn't even crack the lineup in Arizona. He couldn't even get on the active roster. And all of a sudden he's a Pro Bowl alternate the same year. Right. And so, and he was never that guy his whole career, right? And he just turns it around. So it's pretty cool. And sometimes it's just about the situation you get put into and the coaches and the scheme and everything else. And so, um, it's a pretty cool situation. So, but I will say, I think Patriots offensively, that's going to have to be the game plan. The game plan is going to have to be get after those linebackers, try to run basically what they've been doing, which is a lot of power. They haven't been running as much outside zone. And if you watched any of their preseason games, which I'm sure you didn't, but if you watched any of their preseason games, they ran a ton of outside zone and they suck at it. They're not good at it, right? And so like it was a mess. And so they're now running inside zone. And when they run outside, primarily they're running power or they're running a toss play or they're running things like that. And they're not running that outside stretch zone play because it's just not working for them, right? And so, but they've been very good at running the inside stretch, or the inside zone, I should say. And they're great at running power. They've been great at running power. They continue to be great at running power. So it's a very different look from the offense because the Patriots have been really the only team in the league, or one of the only teams in the league, to play with a fullback consistently. And they just completely got rid of the fullback this year. Just no fullback.
Yeah.
And so that's been interesting to see. It's been a little bit of an adjustment for them, but they've ran the ball pretty well the last few games. That's going to be the big matchup. And Hoyer, listen, I mean, at some point, Hoyer's going to have to make some plays, right? And I don't know if that's going to happen. I can't imagine them going into Green Bay and winning with Brian Hoyer quarterback. I guess you never know, but it's going to have to be a Herculean game by the defense if that's going to be the case. And I think the Patriots defense is better than people give them credit for. I think that they can at least slow down Green Bay, but it just keeps coming back to the Patriots right now are an average team in the NFL. Last week against Baltimore, they gave up 37 points or 36 points. I don't know how many points, 37 points. It doesn't matter. They gave up a lot of points last week, okay? And so, but they also played really well at times, and then at times they were terrible. And so, you have these alternating great plays and terrible plays, and then you have these, they're down 5 points at the end of the game, and Mac throws an interception in the end zone. Then they get a 3-and-out. They're still down 5 points, and you throw a long pass to Aguilar, and he fumbles. And it's it's been happening to them really for the last 2 or 3 years that they just can't get out of their own way. And it's just not the Patriots team that people are used to seeing, right? Undisciplined, stupid mistakes, penalties galore, turnovers like crazy. So those are the things that are going to have to get fixed offensively and defensively. But I really do feel if they can clean those things up defensively, they can play with anyone on the defensive side of the football. It just now becomes do they have enough offensively without Mac Jones at this point now to compete with any of these teams? And I just don't see how you can do that short of running Damian Harris 37 times for 280 yards. I don't know how you do that and keep pace with this Packers team. Even if you play well against this Packers team, it's going to be difficult to do, I think.
Yep. Yeah, and you mentioned a little bit of the passing game of the running backs. I do think that's an area where the Packers are a little bit vulnerable on defense. The linebackers, Devondre Campbell had an all-pro season last year. Another guy that Packers kind of picked up in the middle of the offseason and got a great year out of. But they've been playing rookie Quay Walker, the guy, a lot. He's basically getting 70% of the defensive snaps, and he's a hit stick. Man, he closes fast. He is violent. He's got a little bit of a nose for the football, but he's young and inexperienced, and he can be picked on a little bit, especially in zone coverage. So that's, I think, one of the areas where, one of the theories that we have around Acme Packing Company is right. The defense is only as good as its weakest link, and right now that might be the weakest link on this Packers defense, just because of his inexperience, specifically, as a coverage player and kind of navigating through blocks and things. So again, you get him out into space unblocked, he's going to make the play just about every time, and he's going to make a violent, exciting play. But if you can get him thinking, that's a good thing for the offense.
Yeah, well, and that's part of the problem with rookies, right? Is that they haven't seen a lot in the NFL yet. And I love Quay. I love Quay Walker. I really was super high on him coming out of the draft. I thought he was better than Nakobe Dean, which of course Dean went significantly later than he did, but still, I love him. So I thought it was a great pick by Green Bay. And again, it's funny because, everyone gets pissed about this Packers not going offense and not doing this, but you have to build that defense up. Like if you watch what New England did for 20 years, yes, you have Brady. Of course you have Brady. Like you can't win without Brady. But you also need the defense, right? And so yes, you have Rodgers, fine. But you have to have playmakers on defense as well. And that's what's been missing for so long for Green Bay. And, listen, people go back and forth and talk about how he had this defense and he had that defense. And I don't want to get into the nitty gritty of it. But the fact of the matter is that you didn't have a New England defense in 2003, 2004, 2014. You didn't have that. And so, and that's the type of thing that at this point he needs that. And if you build these young receivers up, you never know. Right. And then you have enough. So I think that makes sense,
Yeah, the one year in Rodgers' career really had that was 2010, the Super Bowl. I mean, that was a top 3 defense in the NFL that year. So
no, it's true. It's true.
Yeah,
so
and the one other interesting thing I'd say on that too is it's not like they haven't tried to invest on defense. Almost every one of their first round picks in the last 15 years have been on the defensive side. Jordan Love, I think Brian Bulaga. There's a couple of offensive linemen in there, but I think something like 12 of the last 15 first-round draft picks they've used on defense. It's just a lot of the guys haven't worked out, haven't been the players that you hoped. And I think the other thing there too is they're always drafting in the mid to late 20s because they've been consistently getting to the divisional round of the playoffs or later, and so you're not getting that top talent. That's those top 15, top 10 guys where you feel like you got a little more of a sure thing. So there's always a little bit of projection there. And some of the guys like Kenny Clark have hit and have been great. Some of the guys like Clinton Dix and Demarius Randall and some of these other guys haven't. And that's, it's tough when, when you're kind of continuously stuck in that late 20s range as you guys, being Pats fans, have kind of lived with that too. But it feels like the Pats have hit on a lot more of those defensive guys for whatever reason than the Packers have in the last 15 years or so.
Yeah, well, you know what it is? The Patriots typically, when they're in that spot, trade out and they move back and they pick up extra picks. So they're drafting 10 guys instead of drafting 6 guys, and then you have a better shot at it. You know what I mean? So,
sure.
I will say, Clinton Dix. I mean, the best thing he did in the NFL was give a ton of good fantasy names to people, right? So it's just it's not really the best thing when that's the best thing in his career. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So we talked about this a little bit earlier, but Dark Blue was talking about the weirdly optimistic rumors about Mac Jones, and we mentioned this earlier, but I'll say it now, and I think it's important too. With Tua now leaves the stadium in an ambulance and is going to the hospital to get checked out. At some point, right? And I don't know who said it. I saw something on Twitter. I think it was this morning. I don't remember who. It doesn't matter. Sometimes the guys aren't necessarily going to protect themselves. You have to step in and say, no, you're not playing. I don't care. Even if Max says he can play, even if the doctors look at it and say, you know what, he might be able to play. No. If I'm Bill Belichick, I'm saying no. I don't care how good you feel. I don't care how hard you worked. I don't care what the medical team says. That's a badly sprained ankle. You're not going out there. It's not happening. I'm not allowing it to happen. I wouldn't allow it to happen this week. I wouldn't allow it to happen next week. Maybe the third week, maybe, but probably not. I just what are we doing? Why are we rushing him back already? It doesn't make any sense. There's no reason to do that. I know you want to win. I know you want to keep pace. I know you want to do that, but that's the hard thing for me is why do that? It doesn't make any sense, right? So to me, it's look at the long view, right? If you think Mac is the guy and you want him to be your quarterback for the next 10 to 15 years, why are you trotting him out there with a better chance of hurting his ankle again and, developing something that could be a long-term injury as opposed to just letting him sit for 4 weeks and get his ankle healthy? It's just I don't know why we're overthinking this. It's just do not let him play for the love of God. Like, just don't do it.
Yeah, I go back to the experience I had. I had a badly sprained ankle about this time last year, and look, I'm older than Mac Jones by plenty to have to spend a lot more time recovering from something like that than he probably will. But I mean, I know my ankle wasn't right for 6 months. Right. So and again, obviously these guys have access to the best sports medicine that exists out there, and all the painkillers you could possibly need and what have you. But just thinking back to if I had gone out there and tried to walk for the first week, let alone trying to go out there and play football 7 days later, you might as well have just taken my foot and amputated it at that point.
Yeah.
So,
no, right.
No, there's no. I think you're completely spot on. There is no reason to risk a significant long-term injury at this point.
Right. So and listen, to the people listening, I want Bailey Zappi to start too. I do, but he's not going to. That's Bill Belichick would never start a rookie. I know I said last year Bill Belichick would never start a rookie quarterback, and he did. But he's never going to start a backup, a third string rookie quarterback. Zappi is not ready to start. He's not NFL ready. He's not any of those things. I know Brian Hoyer stinks. I know he's lost his last 11 starts. I know. I get it. Okay. But he at least gives you the chance to not completely screw everything up. Right. And so that's the big thing for me. Or as Dark Blue Gold said, we can just trot Jacoby Myers out there to play quarterback. But it's he did play quarterback in college, for those of you that didn't know that. It's just he's just not going to do it. He's not going to do it. He's going to go with the sure thing, with Hoyer, who's a guy that he can trust and he knows what he's going to get from. It's not going to be very good. You're not going to get something great from him, but you at least know what you're going to get from Brian Hoyer. You have no idea what's going to happen to Bailey Zappi, who looked fine in the preseason, but now you're talking about going against a scripted defense who's going to game plan against your offense and try to take things away and confuse the hell out of you in mid-game. You're asking for disaster if you do that.
Can I ask a practical question here? Would Brian Hoyer be a better quarterback if he went by his actual first name? If he were Axel Hoyer, he would be a much better quarterback. I'm convinced of this. There's something to the theory, I think, of you have to have a good name to be a great quarterback. And Axel Hoyer is a way better name than Brian Hoyer. I
have absolutely no idea why he's been going by Brian his entire life when his first name is Axel. What the hell is he doing? I just that's outrageous. Yeah. I'm more pissed. That's insane. I mean, how could you trust that guy ever again if his first name's Axel and he goes by Brian? That's crazy. That would be like Mac Jones going by McCorkle. He's not going to show up and go by McCorkle. I know it's his first name, but come on, it's crazy. So, and listen, Patriots and Dark Google mentioned the last time Patriots fans saw Brian Hoyer play was in Kansas City on that Monday afternoon game or whatever the hell, Tuesday, whatever the hell they played, where they flew out the morning of in 2020, and it was a complete disaster. And it happened. They were down in the red zone at the end of the first half, and I think they were down in the red zone at some other time too. And he let the clock run out, and instead of it was a complete disaster. But he got thrown in the last minute because Cam tested positive for COVID. They flew there the day of the game, the morning of the game. They flew there. It was a complete mess. It was a mess, that game. So they flew there on two separate planes, guys that were maybe COVID positive, maybe not. It was nuts. It was absolutely insane. So I can't hold that one against him. Now, he is 0 for his last 10 other than that game too. So it's not like he's played good football, but I do think that he's capable of at least playing semi-fine football, which is probably better than you're going to get from Bailey Zappi at this point. I just don't I know he threw 62 touchdown passes last year, but he's just not an NFL quarterback yet. And so you're going to get Brian Hoyer, and I'm going to hate watching it. And they're going to come home with their red uniforms on that we've been waiting for years for them to play. And then Brian freaking Hoyer is going to be a starting quarterback, and they do it, and it's going to suck. But it just is what it is, unfortunately. And it's the spot that we're in. It's like when you guys came to New England and it was finally Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady and it was Matt flipping Flynn.
Yep.
Like,
yeah, that was that
crazy.
2010 game brings back some memories, right? Because that was the week after Rodgers, I think, got concussed at Ford Field in Detroit.
Yep.
And yeah, that was supposed to be it, right? We've had the same thing with the first two Rodgers Mahomes games that were supposed to happen, because we still haven't gotten it, because a couple of years ago Mahomes busted his ankle or whatever it was, and maybe it was his knee. Yeah, we got Matt Moore on that game, and then last year Rodgers tested positive for COVID. Amid all that stuff, we got the Jordan Love game. So we're still waiting on the State Farm sponsorship derby to happen one of these days. So
yeah, it's crazy. It's really interesting though. I will say, a little fun fact from Matt. Matt's not here today, but he sent me with a fun fact to give, so I'm going to give it. The last 3 times the Patriots and Packers have played, one of them has gone on to win the Super Bowl that season.
I don't know.
Packers won in 2010, Patriots won in 2014 and 2018. Now we're in 2022, and who knows? We'll see what happens, right? So,
all right.
But I feel like there's always weird things that happen when the Patriots and Packers play. Like, they had the Dan Connolly kick return in 2010. Yeah, the only play I remember from the 2014 game is the Jordy Nelson slant pass on Gilmore that he just whiffed on.
Yeah.
Not Gilmore, Revis, right? That he just whiffed on. But it's interesting. And the 2018 was a blowout. But Rodgers played in that game too. Yeah.
That one was weird because we actually just wrote this up on Acme Packing Company. My one of our guys, John Meerdink, wrote this up recapping that game. That was a tie game early in the fourth quarter. Mm-hmm. And it was an unfortunate ill-timed Aaron Jones fumble that gave New England back the ball, I think, deep in Packers territory. They went down, scored quick, and then pulled away from there. But that was at least a game for 3 quarters, and then that actually ended up really being the start of the end for Mike McCarthy, because that was in the middle of a really rough stretch for the schedule, and then it was only about 6 weeks later that they just completely fell apart at home against a bad Josh Rosen-led Arizona team, and that got McCarthy fired. So
yeah, anytime you lose to Josh Rosen,
man, yikes. So, but no, here we are. So we're in a much better place.
I agree. Now, are you confident in the coaching staff? Because last year, I mean, people would look at what happened last year in the playoffs and be like, do we really feel like, we're 100% confident? By the way, I don't know if I would fault them for kicking the field goal in that situation. I understand I get it, right? I understand why you go for the touchdown there. I do. And I also understand that it's Tom Brady on the other side, right? I think that's the only reason I would have gone for it on 4th down, because the other quarterback is going to drive them. He's going to drive them down the field. It's just like if Rodgers were on the other sideline, right? Or Manning were on the other sideline, or Mahomes or Josh Allen. You have to know who's on the other side, right? So I might say, hey, I'm okay still being down a few points, but now a touchdown wins the game as opposed to just tying the game or whatever. But I just with this Brady on the other side, I don't look at it.
I get it. I get exactly where you're coming from on that one. That's been the debate for a year and a half now, because that was the 2020 game.
Oh, geez,
and then
you're right.
I mean, we're going back another year too, right? So like last year was the special teams cluster F at Lambeau against San Francisco.
Sheesh.
So if you're asking me if I feel better than last year, you bet your ass I do, because we got Rich Bisaccia coaching special teams, and he actually seems like he knows what the heck he's doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're through 3 games, they're sitting like 14th in special teams DVOA instead of last. I'll take it.
Okay. Well,
I'll take
middle of the road's better than
Look,
last.
man. Yeah, mediocre special teams would have gotten the Packers to the NFC Championship last year. If you just don't have, if you don't have that block punt, they win that game, and I think beat the Rams again in the NFC Championship at Lambeau, and probably beat Cincinnati in the Super Bowl. But
yeah,
that's that's too late now. But
I know.
But yeah, no, I don't have really any questions about the coaching staff. The only thing is maybe it's funny to say, like we were talking about the defense, and it's weird to say that I'm not super confident in the defensive coordinator, if only because his track record. It's Joe Barry. He was in Detroit when they went 0-16. He was in Washington for a couple years when they were bad. Like, he's never really led a good defense.
Yeah.
Here's hoping that changes. And they played a very different style last week against Tampa. They were a lot more aggressive, a lot more man coverage than they had played the 2 weeks earlier, when they basically sat in zone all game and got eaten up by Justin Jefferson. So my only concern is primarily around, can he adjust in game to what's happening. But outside of that, I think the offensive coaching staff is in a really good place. They retained some real key guys after Nathaniel Hackett, the coordinator last year, went to Denver. That's a whole nother topic of discussion.
God, he looks lost. Jesus.
But yes, they promoted Stenovich, their offensive line coach, to OC, and he's been, I think, doing a really solid job helping LaFleur with the game planning. Obviously, LaFleur does the play calling, so that's all still his responsibility. But yeah, the biggest question on that side was, on the coaching side, was just, can they be competent on special teams? And not only has Bisaccia, have them playing better, they also decided, we probably need to let this guy who knows a thing or two about this phase of football have a little bit of say in our personnel decisions when it comes to that. And so they've got a couple of guys that they brought in who were in Vegas with the Raiders last year with Bisaccia, who are clearly head and shoulders better than anybody else they've had on special teams, especially as gunners in the punt team and on kick coverage. Way better than anybody they've had there for the last 5 or 6 years. And you've already seen the difference with that, just on coverage teams. They're not doing a whole lot on returns, but fine. Make a fair catch and don't do anything stupid, and
right.
We'll sort it out. But yeah, the coverage is so much better. They brought in Pat O'Donnell, the punter from the Bears. He just won Special Teams Player of the Week in the NFC. First time a Packers punter has done that in 10 years. So we're feeling riding this high right now on special teams, and compared to where we were 9 months ago, that's a very strange feeling.
Well, and that's one of those things. It's one of those things that isn't sexy, but when you don't have it, you realize how important it is, right? And Belichick always stacks those guys, and people, oh my God, he's got 6 guys that only plays. But it's like, yeah, okay, fine, but when you suck at it, it costs you games, and that's.
I look at it as you are rarely going to win a game on special teams, but you can absolutely lose it in a heartbeat. Right. And that's exactly what happened in the playoffs last year.
Yeah. So that's frustrating. So we'll see. And listen, I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to be, as many of the listeners know, and I talked to you about this already, Tex. I'm going there. I can't flip and wait. I'm
excited for you. Yeah,
I'm like, the whole time you've been talking, I've just been staring at the picture behind you, because I'm just like, I'm gonna see that in person this weekend. I'm so excited. I'm doing a tour on Monday. I'm gonna be like,
nice.
They're gonna walk me through I guess you get to walk through the tunnel and then onto the sideline. I'm gonna lose my mind. It's gonna be so great. So I'm over the moon, super excited, about going. And I know, I wish I could see Mac Jones and the Patriots be 100% and give the Packers everything they got. But I don't want to say I don't care, because I want the Patriots to win every game, but I kind of don't care if they win or not. I just want to go to Lambeau. I'm so excited about it. And so it's one of those spots for me that's like a bucket list. It's like if you're a football fan, that's like a bucket list spot to go. And so I'm very excited about it.
For sure. Yeah. And I would certainly hope, and I'm sure that Packers fans are going to be, very, very open, very welcoming. That generally is the case to visiting fans, as long as you're not from Minnesota or Chicago. You're maybe Dallas. I'll throw Dallas in there too.
Yeah.
But as long as you're, they're almost exclusively they're going to be, they're going to be good hosts, and I'm sure you'll have a great time. Make sure you get some deep fried cheese curds. Make sure you get some good Wisconsin beer while you're out there, and you'll have a great time.
There we go. Love it. I am gonna have to find someone. I did this last year in Houston. It was kind of an impromptu thing, but now I've decided I'm gonna do it every time I go somewhere. I have. So my thing is I wear like pins on my jersey. And so we get a pin. We've been getting a pin every year since 2008. I'm a season ticket holder. We've been getting a pin every year since '08 as season ticket holder. So I have all the season ticket holder pins on my jersey.
Nice.
So last year, walking out of the stadium in Houston, there was a guy, and it was like breast cancer week or whatever. So they were giving out like the pins, like the breast cancer pin. And I walk out, and the guy's like, "Hey, can I have your pin?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay, sure." And he's like, "Here, take one of mine." And he gave me a Texans pin. Nice. And exchanged it for so now I have a Texans pin. So I'm like, I have to find someone in Green Bay that's got a Packer that's wearing, Packers pins, and I'll go to exchange, give them a Patriots pin, they'll give me a Packers pin and take a picture with it or whatever, like a jersey exchange, but like a jersey swap, but but for a pin. So so I just decided, I'm like, that'd be kind of fun, and then I'll have a pin of all different players of all different places, you know what I mean? So just something stupid but something fun,
No, that sounds like an awesome tradition to get started. I think that's pretty great. I'm sure that somebody will be more than happy to do that with you.
I hope so. The Midwest, we always talk about the Midwest and how nice they are. So seems that way. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, I assume you're expecting a win from Green Bay this week.
Yeah, that's safe. That's a safe assumption. This should be. This is actually it's funny how well this season, the start of this season, the schedule kind of matches up with last year for the Packers. Week 1, you get blown out on the road. Week 2, you come back home for a primetime game against a not very good divisional team, blow them out pretty well. Week 3, you go on the road to a team that has given you a lot of trouble in the past and has been, a host of horrors for you, and you come out with a really tough but close victory against a big NFC team. And then you come back and you feel like you've got a stack of 3 or 4 games that should be winnable games for the team. Last year, I think there was a Washington game, Pittsburgh, who wasn't very good, at this point last year.
Yeah.
A couple other winnable games before they went down to Arizona. This year, you feel like Patriots, Giants, Jets, Washington, those are 4 games that should set up well for this Packers team before they have to go play Buffalo on Sunday night in Week 8. And so that it's funny how this almost seems like it feels like it's mirroring last year, and hopefully the Packers can keep the same trend that they had last year when they went on a nice little run to finish off the first half of the season.
Yep. And that's kind of where I would assume Patriots fans are at too. Someone was saying that almost 50% at this point that what's it called, the knockout pool people are taking Green Bay, because it just seems like one of those games that the Packers should fairly easily win. I mean, Brian Hoyer is going to be the starting quarterback, but again, it's the Belichick factor. Like, that's the Belichick factor for me, where I felt like even this past week everyone was picking Baltimore. Everybody picked Baltimore to win. And I was like, the Patriots have a chance now, and they blew it at the end, but they were there. They were right there, and they made some mistakes and blew it at the end. Now, Brian Hoyer, quarterback, I just don't see how they pull it off. But, like, I don't know if any coach in the league can do it. It's Belichick. So, like, I don't put it out of the realm of possibility. I would just think I'd be surprised if they won. I guess what I would say is I'm not expecting them to win. But I wouldn't necessarily be super surprised if they won. So that's kind of where I'm at. That's why I'm at with the Patriots every week. It's like, hey, even if they're playing a really tough team, they're probably not going to win, but you never know, right? So we always have that kind of ace up our sleeve with Belichick. So it certainly helps. So we'll see. Should be a fun matchup either way. So, all right, before we let you go, we are going to do our one final segment. I let you know too late, but you know what? I was like, you know what? I didn't even tell you. The last 2 times I had guests on, I told them about it. They're like, oh, yeah, we'll do it. And then they didn't do anything. And I was like, all right, it's fine. Don't even worry about it. We'll just, So we have our new segment, our newish segment coming up. So here we go.
And now for something we think you'll really like. This Week in Sports History.
All right. So this one's kind of relevant, I would say, right now. Aaron Judge yesterday hit his 61st home run. And tomorrow, which is September 30th, 1927, Babe Ruth hit his 60th home run in the 8th inning of New York's 4-2 win. Also happened at Yankee Stadium. So there you go, 1927, he hit his 60th home run. So It's pretty unbelievable when you think about how good Babe Ruth was. But anyways, ridiculous. So Tex, man, thank you so much for coming through. This has been a great conversation. Really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to heading up there this weekend. And I always just feel like there's something about the Packers. Anytime you see them playing, it's just like it's just like the Packers. It's pretty cool, So just like the franchise itself has that history and nostalgia behind it. Winning the first 2 Super Bowls and being so good for so long. It's pretty cool. So it's always a pretty good, cool opportunity. And even those players, that get to go to Lambeau, they don't go to Lambeau all the time, and so it's a place for them to kind of go. And they were talking this week about how special of a place it is and how cool it is to play there. And so, it's exciting for them, and I'm sure it's exciting for me as a fan and for us watching it. So it should be a fun matchup this week. I would say for sure.
Yeah, I'm happy for you that you get to go and experience all that Lambeau has to offer. Make sure you get some tailgating in. The lots around Lambeau are pretty legendary. So I'm sure you'll have a great time. Before and during and after the game. Yeah. It's tough not to. So the tour is great. And really, that's the thing about Green Bay, right? It's this little small town. It's the only one of those small towns that was around at the very start of the NFL that still has its team, and that ownership piece of it. The fan ownership is still, it's still unique in all of North American sports. And I get the points that people make about stock, you can't trade it, you can't accrue value on it, but that's not why Packers fans buy stock in the team. It's not an investment to make money. It's an investment to make sure that the team stays where it is, doesn't get picked off and moved away someplace. So that's what it's all about. And it does feel it's fun and it's special to be a fan of and a shareholder in that team and to get to cover them on a daily basis. So I try not to take that for granted, but yeah, I'm looking forward to a good game. Should be, hopefully at least an entertaining one for everybody. And hopefully, I'm certainly crossing my fingers that Packers win comfortably, but we'll see what happens. Crazier things have happened.
Yeah. Well, they did give Romo. They gave it to Romo on the 425. It's the national game. Yep. So, obviously they think it has at least has the chance of being a good game. So, we'll see. Maybe the networks and Vegas know more than we do, but who knows, So, before we let you go, before we end the show, just, tell everyone where they can read you and see you and hear you and everything else.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So you can catch me on Twitter. It's @TexWestern. You can get us acmepackingcompany.com spelled out, and Twitter it's @acmepackingco. I do a game recap podcast usually every week with my co-editor Justice Mosqueda. He's also on the SB Nation NFL show on a fairly regular basis too. We got a couple other podcasts in our feed as well, so you can find that anywhere you get your podcasts. And head over to acmepackingcompany.com for all of our full Packers coverage all weekend.
Love it. Yep, it's great. And listen, go out and find yourself that Chris Farley cheesehead T-shirt somewhere. I'm going to look out for that in Green Bay.
If I can find where my buddy found it for me, I will send it to you, and so you can post it if
you're
interested.
I absolutely will. That's awesome. That's a legendary shirt. So. But all right, thank you so much for coming through, Tex. We appreciate it. Enjoy the game, everyone. And I probably won't be here for the game recap, but Matt will definitely be doing a game recap with someone. Maybe it'll be me, but probably not. But who knows? We'll see what happens. So, thanks for watching, guys, and we'll talk to you soon.